Hello, my name is Lou Marcos, and I am a professor in English and scholar in residence at Houston Baptist University, where I've taught for the last 29 years. I would like to speak to you today about our special MLA, Masters of Liberal Arts program. Our MLA is a traditional degree, 36 hours, which means 12 classes. You can do it in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, whatever pace you want to set yourself at. Now, our MLA is open to all people, but when we put it together, we specially targeted it to teachers at classical Christian or classical charter schools or just traditional schools that follow a traditional curriculum and would like to learn more about a classical curriculum to make them better teachers. And so in this video, I want to specifically focus on aspects of our MLA program that make us unique and that will make you better teachers, especially if you're teaching in a more classical, traditional mode at a public or perhaps a private school. Now, at our MLA program, we are all big fans of C.S. Lewis. And so as I speak about 7 aspects of our program that are unique, I'm going to link them to various aspects of C.S. Lewis. And I should say that if you look in the description box underneath this video, I have included an outline if you want to look at that as well. First and most important, we, like C.S. Lewis, are a school that believes in the great books, in the canon, in the great books of the intellectual, Western tradition. We believe that they should be at the center of education, and we put our focus on them. And we not only put our focus on the great books, we put them on the books themselves and not just criticism about those books. We will mention critics, of course, but we want to engage our students with the primary text themselves in hopes that you will then show your students and challenge your students with these same primary texts. And yet, although we are canonical, although we look at the great books from Homer all the way to today, like C.S. Lewis, we are open to more popular non-canonical writings that also ask questions about the nature of God and man and the universe. So Lewis, although he was one of the great classic scholars, also wrote children's literature and science fiction and fantasy. And so we are open to more popular culture if it draws us more deeply into the great questions. Who am I? Why am I here? What is my purpose? Using myself as an example, I split my time in the MLA between teaching classes on ancient Greece and Rome and teaching classes on the Chronicles of Narnia and the Lord of the Rings. Number 3. We try in our MLA program, and hope that you will pass this on to your students in your own institution, we try to do or to explode what C.S. Lewis famously called chronological snobbery. Chronological snobbery is the idea that if something is newer, it must be better and more intelligent and wiser and more mature. Not at all. Even though we are a Baptist school, we are very much, like Lewis and his friend Tolkien, apologists for the Middle Ages. The Middle Ages weren't all dark. That was where the university was created. And we are not the kinds of professors who look down on the past or feel superior to it. We want to take our students, and in hope they will take their own students someday, into a deeper dialogue with people from the classic and medieval and Renaissance and Romantic all the way up to the modern age. Maybe the best way to put it, and I'm using a metaphor from C.S. Lewis himself, we don't want our students to look down on the medieval knight, let's say, and study him as a strange object. We want to teach them to put the knight's armor on themselves and look at the world through the visor. So we respect the past and are there to learn from it. And that leads to number 4, which I think may make us more unique than almost any other university in the country, and that is key to our mission. C.S. Lewis wrote a book called Screwtape Letters, and Screwtape is a devil who's teaching his nephew how to tempt people. And he tells him it's very important that your patient, the person you're tempting, doesn't read the great books or the classics. Because you know what? If all Americans read the classics, both the Christian and the pre-Christian ones, Greco-Roman and Judeo-Christian, if we really read them and knew them, Not just the Bible, but Plato and Aristotle. If we knew those, we would see through most of the devil's temptations with ease. But don't worry, Screwtape says. Most modern people do not read the great books. And guess what? The ones who do, the academics, the people that spend their life studying the great works, they are the last people in the world to actually learn anything from them. Now, what does Lewis mean by that? The way the devil prevents professors from learning from the great books is by inculcating in them what he calls the historical point of view. I went to a secular school, University of Michigan, and if you go to most schools in this country, even, I'm sorry to say, a lot of Christian ones, if you study something, say, Dante, when you study Dante with your students, you'll ask all sorts of questions. Who wrote it? When was it written? What were the influences? Who did it influence? Etc., etc. But the one question that will never be answered, the question that would be considered unutterably naive, is the question, is what the ancient writer wrote true? Believe it or not, that's not asked. We ask that question here. We're not here to look down on Dante and Plato and Virgil and Milton. We're there to learn at their feet. We're there to be challenged and to ask, is this true? Because my friends, if you don't ask, is it true? It will never change your belief and it will never change your behavior. So no historical point of view. Here, the great conversation. We are willing to learn. Number 5, we are a Christian school, and even though in our program you will be reading Christian and pre-Christian, secular and sacred writings, whatever we read and study together will be from a Christian point of view, from a Christian worldview. Now, I could speak on that for 2 hours, but just real, in a capsule, part of what that means is, first of all, we actually believe that there's such a thing as the good, the true, and the beautiful, with a capital G, a capital T, and a capital B. When we're reading these works, we are measuring them against philosophical and moral and aesthetic standards. And that makes the quality of our teaching different. Number 2, within this, we also believe as Christians that man was created good in God's image, but is now fallen and depraved. Because we believe that man was made in God's image, we can be true humanists, people who believe that the things human beings make are important and they can survive and they need to be studied and wrestled with. But because we also believe that we're fallen, we're not trying to delude ourselves into thinking we can build some kind of false utopia. We bring to our reading a kind of realism that shows us both our possibilities and our limits. Third, we believe that at the center point of history, God came into the world and became a man. We are incarnational, and therefore we believe that we can find bits and pieces of God's truth and goodness and beauty scattered throughout this world and throughout the literature that is written. That's the kind of Christian worldview goggles or lens that we bring to teaching. 2 more. Number 6, we believe that education must be an education in virtue, both for the teachers we teach and for the students that our teachers will someday teach. We want to do what C.S. Lewis says, restore the stock responses. It is absolutely essential that educators teach virtue and how we should feel about virtue. Lewis wrote a great book called The Preface to Paradise Lost, where he got upset because the Romantic poets, whom I love, but they started misreading Milton's Paradise Lost and tried to argue that Satan was the hero. Now, that's not only ridiculous theologically, but Lewis says the only reason somebody could actually look at Satan as the hero is if we've completely lost our stock response to treachery. Satan, whatever else he is a traitor against God's authority, a malcontent, and we should be disgusted by that. We shouldn't be lured into it. So our education is an education in virtue, and we believe the real role of the liberal arts is not to follow the culture in its moral and ethical decay, but to hold up a higher standard. We do that. Lewis did it. We hope you will teach your students to do it as well. Finally, all of us who teach in the MLA have a specialty, right? Because that's what you do in modern academia. But we are all ultimately at heart, like C.S. Lewis, generalists. We want an interdisciplinary kind of education that brings together literature, history, philosophy, the arts, the sciences, music. We want a holistic view of the things. What we are producing is not specialist. We're producing what often was called a man of letters or a public intellectual. We want to produce students who can speak on a wide range of topics, who are interested in the great conversation, who want to be like C.S. Lewis, G.K. Chesterton, Dorothy Sayers, who want to speak on the issues of the day and engage their own students in those issues. So as we move out of this quarantine and are ready to get back to school, and maybe you're thinking it's time for a further degree in an economy that's uncertain, I would ask you to please think about the Masters of Liberal Arts program at Houston Baptist University, and that you will come and join us in the great conversation. Thank you, and have a blessed day.